What does it mean to be an apex predator, or a king of monsters? No being in fiction knows better than the king of the Monsterverse, Godzilla. Throughout the series of movies and novelizations that make up the Monsterverse, Godzilla has routinely established his dominance and shown the world exactly why he is the most powerful force on the planet. However, what about other planets, other universes? How does this king stack up when faced against the power of monsters from alternate dimensions? That is exactly what we'll be diving into today. In this video, we'll be matching the walking nuke known as Godzilla against the walking natural disasters of the Narutoverse, the 9 bijuu. In other words, today we'll be exploring and breaking down Godzilla versus the tailed beasts. In order to get an understanding for how these matchups will go, we'll first need to understand 1. What the matchups will be, and 2. How exactly these monsters scale to one another. So first, what exactly will the matchup structure be? I think the most interesting way to do this will be gauntlet-style. So Godzilla will be facing off each tailed beast in numerical order from 1 tail to 9. Between rounds he will get a full recharge, and once he fails to clear, we'll talk about what would happen if he were amped like he was in the fight against Ghidorah and if it changes anything. It's also worth noting that we will not be doing verse equalization here because that would mean that radiation equals chakra, and that would allow for Godzilla to potentially get an amp from every bijuu bomb, and that's just not fair. I mean, could you imagine Kurama firing a bijuu bomb at Godzilla, thinking he's leveled him, only for Godzilla to get massively amped and discharge a nuke's worth of energy as he walks his way? Yeah, not fair. Oh, and it's also worth noting that we will not be including feats from the new Godzilla x Kong movie, because I don't want to spoil anyone, but he'll be in his standard form from Godzilla vs. Kong. So how about the scaling? Well, let's start with the king of monsters. Godzilla is an absolute tank. At a whopping 120 meters tall and 100,000 tons, not only is his power output outrageous, his durability is as well. In terms of attack potency, Godzilla is easily planetary plus, and I mean easily. His atomic breath has been calced consistently at 2.56 to the 33rd joules, which is more than enough to destroy a planet. This is because Godzilla's atomic breath is actually produced by nucleosynthetic glands in his throat. Nucleosynthesis is the process through which atoms are created from more elementary particles, or from other atoms that are broken down and turned into more elementary particles. So this process is essentially subatomization, which is bonkers. A statement that backs up this scaling is Godzilla's atomic breath being called nature's most devastating weapon, putting it above the 1960 Valdivia earthquake, the strongest earthquake ever recorded at a 9.6 on the Richter scale. This quake generated approximately 300 zetajoules of seismic energy, putting it at greater than country level in terms of force. Now, keep in mind, this seismic energy is spread across multiple continents, and it caused thousands of deaths worldwide. Imagine all of that force being concentrated into a beam of subatomized quantum particles. The attack potency for this level of force has been calced at 74 teratons. Just 1 teraton of force is equal to a 2-kilometer wide meteor crashing into Earth at 25 kilometers a second, or, around the force of 200,000 SAR bombs. The strongest bomb ever detonated by man, going off at once. Now, that's just 1 teraton. Multiply that by 74, and that's roughly how much power this blast produces. But that's not even the craziest part. This statement from Michael Dougherty, director of Godzilla King of Monsters, basically says that the most devastating weapon in nature statement extends to the universe at large. This could literally put the top end of AP for Godzilla's atomic breath above the power of things like quasars, black holes, and other terrifying celestial things of the sort. This is actually kind of supported by the movie novelization of Godzilla vs. Kong, where they had Godzilla's atomic breath puncture a space-time barrier. Now, you could argue that that's because it works on a quantum scale, but you could also argue that at its best, the AP literally allows for it to mess with space-time. So, needless to say, Godzilla's atomic breath being scaled to planetary is actually a massive lowball with all things considered, and could reasonably be scaled to star level without much of an argument against it. But is he a glass cannon? Absolutely 100% not. Godzilla consistently scales to somewhere between continental and planetary, if not higher in terms of durability. One example of this is the fact that he tanked the Castle Bravo bomb going off in his face with no issues. This has been calced to 7.4 teratons, or about country level plus. He was also able to go toe-to-toe with Ghidorah while weakened from starvation, as well as defeat Ghidorah in the past. This easily scales him to multi-continental due to the fact that Ghidorah generates Category 6 hurricanes everywhere it goes, just with the flap of its wings. There is a potential feat for him that makes it even crazier, but this should be taken with a grain of salt because it's not necessarily clear what's going on. Basically, it appears that the Monsterverse comics have him surviving a direct blow from the meteor that wiped out the dinosaurs in the Permian extinction event. There have been some debunks for this that seem reasonable, but that would be a high-end interpretation that would get him to ridiculous durability levels. So, with all of that, it's safe to say that both Godzilla's attack potency and durability are somewhere between high multi-continental and star level, and that's kind of a lowball in terms of AP. Now, Godzilla's lifting strength is also nothing to scoff at, as he's able to lift and slam the other monsters with ease, who all weigh dozens of thousands to hundreds of thousands of tons. So, he'd be in the gym, he'd be picking up and putting down, But what about the bijuu? How do they stack up against this absolute monster? Well, the bijuu vary in strength to some degree, but the War Arc showed us that essentially the tailed beasts 1 through 7 generally scale to one another. Gyuki and halved Kurama scale roughly to one another, and a full power Kurama should be about 2 times what he is when he's halved, obviously. I will say, the scaling on the bijuu is generally established in the Naruto community, so I'll just go with the most accepted scaling for them in order to save time. In terms of attack potency, the ultimate technique for a bijuu is none other than the bijuu bomb, and this is capable of decimating entire mountain ranges, and these things have been calced to between island level and multi-continental. Now, there are planetary arguments, but it's more so for life wiping, which only takes about country levels of AP, so outside of full power Kurama, we'll just go ahead and stick with the multi-continental range, the high end, and I would say full power Kurama probably has legitimate planetary arguments, but the bijuu, halved Kurama all the way down to Shukaku probably don't have enough force to blow up a planet. Their durability is relatively similar to this, albeit maybe a little bit lower, with Gyuki being able to survive one of his own bijuu dama being slapped back at him. However, this did incapacitate him, and he wasn't at full power, so it's unclear how strong his bijuu bomb actually was, but generally it's safe to scale the bijuu to somewhere between high island level to multi-continental in terms of durability as well. Now, the first 6 bijuu should be on that lower end, maybe more along the lines of country to continental range, with Gyuki and halved Kurama sitting comfortably in that multi-continental range. Full power Kurama being double that in strength should, again, scale somewhere around planetary in both AP and durability. Their physical strength is also super impressive, being able to slam one another around, but it's not entirely clear how heavy they are. I mean, Hiruzen, as like a 50-year-old with Enma, was able to push Kurama out of the village, and now in the manga it seems that he had help, but it's like, really, if they don't weigh enough to stop themselves from sliding back, how heavy can Kurama really be? But, they are enormous, so I think for the sake of the video, putting them at about the same size as Godzilla is fair, since their physical size scaling is super inconsistent, ranging from like 50 meters to 500 meters in size. And I'm not kidding. We have some of them looking like they're the exact same size as Gamabunta in some areas, and then just absolutely dwarfing Gamabunta in other areas. So we'll just put them at that same size of about 100 plus meters and about 100,000 tons, with Kurama at full power at double that size. That said, there is something that you guys may have noticed I haven't mentioned yet. Speed. This is where it gets a bit weird. We all should know by now that the bijuu easily scale to relativistic speeds and maybe even FTL, but honestly, Godzilla is nowhere near that, at least not consistently. Godzilla, while an absolute tank, is not known to be some speed demon, so this may not come as a surprise to you. He's generally calced to somewhere between low hypersonic and massively hypersonic, with a casual turn of his tail being calced at supersonic speeds, as stated by the directorial team for Godzilla vs. Kong. That being said, that is nowhere near relativistic, so with this scaling, the bijuu should all absolutely blitz Godzilla, and if they can do damage to him, because he is a monster in terms of durability, then they should just dominate him. However, do you really think that I'd be making this video if it wasn't interesting? The answer to that is unequivocally no. You see, you can get Godzilla to those relativistic speeds with a higher end interpretation, so that's what we'll be doing here. Essentially, we know that Godzilla's atomic breath is said to be similar to Chekhov radiation, which travels at the speed of light. We also know that Godzilla can react to Ghidorah's gravity beams, which either travel at the speed of lightning, which has a high end of about 1/3 light speed, or the speed of gravity, which moves at light speed. Again, this is a higher end interpretation used for the purpose of making this video interesting, but if it bothers you, I guess you can just say that we're equalizing speed here. But with all of the groundwork laid, it's about time for us to jump into our first matchup. Before we do that though, if you've learned anything or you're just enjoying the video, feel free to like and maybe even subscribe. You know, if you don't hate orphans. If you do hate orphans, make sure not to like and subscribe just so that we know who you are. But without any further ado, let's jump into our first matchup. Our first matchup of this gauntlet is Godzilla vs. Shukaku. I gotta be honest with you, this one isn't close. Now, let me explain why. It's in character for both of these monsters to duke it out physically off rip, so that's probably how it starts, but we know that Gamabunta was able to restrain Shukaku with his claws while transformed into Kurama. That said, I see no reason why Godzilla wouldn't be able to use his claws to restrain him and set up a point-blank atomic breath to the face. Also, while he should be able to use a bijuu bomb, Shukaku is the only one we never see use one in canon. He does it in the anime, but never in the manga. So it's weird to give it to him in a battle debate. Now, even if he does have it, he seems far more likely to use his air blasts, and those things aren't doing anything to this guy who can just like tank planetary attacks. So that said, Godzilla wins, putting Shukaku on a milk carton with very low difficulty. And next up, we have the cat demon, Matatabi. Now, this is definitely more interesting for a few reasons. First, Matatabi has the ability to use a tailed beast bomb, so she would potentially be able to have the capacity to harm him. Second, she's incredibly agile and has claws herself that she would be able to use in close quarters against Godzilla. Here is the problem though. Much like the other lower six-tailed beasts, she's never shown the ability to actually fire off bijuu bombs quickly. She's always had to charge them up. So that right there eliminates Godzilla's weakness of having to charge up his atomic breath, in the case of a bijuu bomb versus atomic breath clash. However, she's far more likely to just go close range at first anyway, so I'm not sure it would even come to that. That being said, Matatabi's fire style is around maybe mountain level, so it's not really doing any damage to Godzilla, and her physical might was something that wasn't really a problem for someone like Kakuzu, so I don't really see her being able to overpower the king of monsters or deal any significant damage, as I believe Godzilla is far more likely to use his atomic breath than she is to use her bijuu bomb, and far more quickly as well. That being said, Godzilla grabs another dub, slaying the Two Tails. After being refreshed from a nice little warm-up, he goes to face the Three Tails, and I gotta tell you, I feel really bad about this one. Honestly, I do. However, I'm going to use this as a moment of education really quick. So, do you guys remember when Datara took down Isobu? Well, he said something really interesting in that chapter that I think a lot of people miss and might provide some food for thought. Datara says that Isobu is much weaker than if he had had a Jinchuriki because he lacks the intelligence to control his power. So what he's saying is that Isobu is dumb. Now, something that's interesting about this is the fact that Isobu actually never says anything other than his name. So it kind of makes sense. Also, the fact that Yagura, who is stated alongside B in terms of mastery over their bijuu, implying that he was a perfect Jinchuriki, was successfully put under Genjutsu and controlled by Obito for over a decade. Considering the fact that a perfect Jinchuriki isn't supposed to be able to be controlled since the bijuu is supposed to break them out, it might be able to be inferred that Isobu was just too dumb to break Yagura out. Now, I personally think that's hilarious, and it's why I feel bad about this one. Now, keep in mind, Kurama is just outright smarter than Naruto, so, you couldn't say that because he doesn't have a Jinchuriki host that he's not smart enough to handle his power, because we see numerous times he just displays being way smarter than Naruto is. So this seems to be sort of like an Isobu exclusive thing, or maybe like a lower tail exclusive thing, but even then, Shukaku seems brash and arrogant, but not necessarily an idiot, so I do think this might be exclusive to Isobu. In the end, though, Isobu's childlike intelligence is gonna be what costs him here. Also, Godzilla has shown the ability to move incredibly stealthily and quickly underwater, so that would eliminate any aquatic advantage that's granted to Isobu in this battle. So Godzilla wins with relatively low difficulty yet again. And next up, Godzilla takes on a challenge that he is ultra familiar with. A giant monkey. I've got to be honest with you guys, even though Son Goku is my second favorite bijuu, he's getting mauled here and his lava style is not helping him. Godzilla has fought Kong on numerous occasions, and Kong has shown some really good battle IQ feats, and Son Goku, even though you could argue he's smarter overall because he can communicate better, I don't really think he has great battle IQ feats outside of, anything that Roshi did. So to me, I would actually give the battle IQ to Kong, weirdly. Now, because the speed is equalized, I do think that this is probably going to be a slugfest that ends up the same way that it did in Godzilla vs. Kong, where Kong just gets beat up and Godzilla puts his foot on his throat and is getting ready to take him out. But for those of you who have seen Godzilla X Kong and feel the need to drop spoilers in the chat to argue with me, first of all, I just want to say you're wrong and let me save you some time. For those of you who have not seen it, skip ahead 10 seconds in 3, 2, 1. You see this? You see this right here? This confirms that Godzilla was not knocked out, just stunned. So, there you have it. That said, Godzilla wins moderate difficulty. Now we're talking. Kokuo is super impressive. Not only is she able to perform a tailed beast bomb, she is also able to use boil release to amp her physicals, and this allowed her to actually launch Gyuki back and wound him with a horn rush. She is also the only one of the tailed beasts controlled by Obito to momentarily break free of his control, so she can present some real issues for Godzilla. Here's what I'll say though. Godzilla's durability just blatantly scales higher than Gyuki's, so I don't see even an amped Kokuo ramming into him with a horn doing any kind of damage. She also requires some charge up time for her bijuu bomb like the other lower 7, so a clash of powerful attacks would likely go in the favor of Godzilla. That said, I do think that Kokuo could put up a decent fight in a physical battle with amping her physicals via, steam release and all that good stuff, and launching these amped rushes at our giant lizard friend, but Godzilla is pretty smart and he's powerful enough to overcome that, likely eventually overpowering her with his might and sending her to the Shadow Realm with a blast of quantum material to the chest. Honesty hour? I hate Saiken. I think she's gross and I'm not a fan. But she can present some serious issues for Godzilla. First of all, she exhibits great tactical intelligence in comparison to the bijuu before her on this list, so that might come in handy. This is especially true when you pair that intellect with her ability to use water release to create a sticky and even a corrosive substance to harm or ensnare her enemies. While Godzilla has shown solid tactical intelligence, even supercharging Kong's axe to give him a chance against Mechagodzilla, I don't think that he would immediately be able to figure out an intelligent strategy to get out of this sticky situation. Oh god, that was really bad.
Oh brother, this guy stinks!
But where Godzilla may lack in intelligence, he more than makes up for it in raw power. If he does get trapped by the sticky goo, I think he just charges up a blast of atomic breath to destroy the ground around his feet. I mean, that should take care of it. This should free him from her trap. But what about the acidic attacks that she can launch, or her bijuu bomb? Well, Godzilla has actually shown some heightened sensory, especially when it comes to energy. So, if she traps him and tries to set up a bijuu bomb attack, I think he would be able to sense the energy and he'd counter with a blast of his own. I do think that he would win this clash too, since his atomic breath consistently scales to high planetary or star level or even higher. So, yeah, it's not going to go good for Saiken in this situation. The acid would be an issue if he wasn't so durable, but come on, do you really think that the guy who takes gravity beams and nukes to the chest routinely is going to be bothered by some acid spray? I personally don't. So, all that being said, Saiken gives Godzilla a good fight utilizing her intelligence to her advantage, but eventually falls to the king of the monsters. Now this is interesting. Chomei can provide a few issues that the others before her can't, giving Godzilla a unique challenge to deal with. First of all, she can fly. Now, that's not going to be a huge problem on its own, since we know that Godzilla can deal with flying opponents, as he was stated to have beaten Ghidorah in the past. And last time I checked, Bug Girl isn't causing Category 6 hurricanes with her wings. Godzilla's atomic breath should be able to even the playing field if she takes to the skies, since it has a range of literally thousands of kilometers, as displayed by Godzilla using it to drill into the hollow earth. However, one unique ability that Chomei has that nobody really seems to bring up is her blinding powder. She can use this to create a luminous distraction for her enemies, allowing for her to land a counter-strike. But even though I do think this would throw Godzilla off, I don't think it would be something that he can't deal with. Again, he's shown the ability to detect energy using extrasensory perception, so assuming she flies into the air, avoids atomic breath, drops the luminous powder, and begins charging up a bijuu bomb, I don't see a scenario in which that doesn't just give away her position to the dude who feasts on energy. This is assuming that he can't already track them passively based on the fact that they are literal chakra monsters made entirely of chakra, so, energy. But that being said, her best chance would be to do exactly what I said, but I see her eventually getting her wings clipped by the atomic breath of Godzilla and falling before the king. Now we are finally to the heavy hitters. If you skipped here, welcome. If you didn't, thank you for watching all of the other ones. I greatly appreciate it. But Gyuki is a problem. Not only can he use the tailed beast bomb that requires charge time, powering it up, he can also fire off mini tailed beast bombs like a machine gun. Now, these are certainly not on the same level as a fully charged tailed beast bomb, so they're probably closer to island level at absolute best. However, that should be enough to at least bother Godzilla, and the death by 1,000 cuts is very real. This paired with Gyuki's intellect can be a massive issue for the King of Monsters. I will say, this fight starts with a physical brawl, more likely than not, and Godzilla would definitely get the better of Gyuki, and I could see him finishing him off there by biting his throat or something. However, I can't see Gyuki getting pressed and not firing off a quick bijuu bomb in order to create some distance. Upon seeing Godzilla get shaken but not put down by a close-range bijuu bomb, I could see Gyuki deciding to either charge up a maximum power bijuu bomb, or if Godzilla has already displayed the ability to use atomic breath, Gyuki could just run around him, firing off smaller bijuu bombs, staggering Godzilla every time he tries to build up energy. This, by the way, is why I chose not to use verse equalization. If chakra equaled radiation here, this would just be charging Godzilla to the max. However, since it's not verse equalization, this is actually where I have Godzilla potentially falling. That is, assuming he does the run around and fire small bijuu bombs at Godzilla technique. If he does try to take him down with a charged bijuu bomb and gives Godzilla time to charge up his atomic breath, Gyuki's toast. Again, the bijuu bombs are calced at the high end, multi-continental, while Godzilla is easily planetary to star level. I mean, even if you give Gyuki the benefit of the doubt and say that his full power bijuu bomb is planetary in attack potency, I mean, Godzilla's star level, bro. Like, at least bare minimum high planetary. So I could honestly see this going either way, with the latter scenario actually being more likely in my opinion, since it seems more in character for him to just try to charge up a bijuu bomb to wipe Godzilla out, like he did against Suigetsu in his battle against Team Taka. So I'd say this probably goes to Godzilla 7 out of 10 times, but Gyuki has a chance if he takes the right route. That being said, since Godzilla takes this more times than not in my opinion, we move on to the head honcho of the bijuu, Kurama. So based on the last one, this one should be relatively obvious. Kurama not only has more power than Gyuki, he also has a bit more intelligence and versatility. I don't see him trying to match Godzilla's atomic breath at all, so he's likely resorting to the run and gun method described before. This is honestly because of the fact that Kurama actually has some knowledge in Boruto about how nuclear fusion works. We're not really sure how he knows this or where he got the information from, and nobody else in the series even mentions it, so I think it's safe to say that he came up with this on his own, which is insane. If that is the case, I see no reason why he'd see Godzilla creating atoms via conversion of radiation in his throat and wouldn't say, "Oh my god, my theories are correct." Kurama low-key is one of the smartest characters in the Narutoverse, and his knowledge of nuclear theory, it's theory in his world because it hasn't actually happened yet, would probably lead him to approach carefully. So, using his superior intellect, mobility, and more than adequate power output, Kurama should defeat the King of Monsters, cementing himself as the new king. But what about amped Godzilla? You know, the one that got super juiced off of a nuke and started discharging radiation in all directions. Yeah, that one. Well, it's not close. You see, Atomic Meltdown Godzilla, as he's so accurately named, is passively discharging continental to multi-continental blasts of radiation. The small ones burn large parts of Ghidorah's wings, and Ghidorah easily scales to multi-continental in terms of durability. The final blast that he sets off that decimated Ghidorah along with his entire storm cloud is calced at 84.5 teratons of force, or 84.5 times the force that 200,000 Tsar bombs would put off if all set off at once. This is nearly a planetary level of force that he can just emit from his body at will. The heat from his body also just passively melts concrete and steel as he walks, so although it wouldn't be a provable argument, you could just say that the heat would damage Kurama as well. It's also worth noting that the gravity beams from Ghidorah that were able to wound Godzilla previously don't even cause him to react in this form. These gravity beams have been calced to between high country level and low multi-continental, so Godzilla in this form casually walks through bare minimum country level attacks as if they are nothing. So I think it's pretty clear that Godzilla wins this one. I'd even go as far as to say that he might be able to take down full power Kurama, but that's more of a debate. Now, if you would like a video specifically on that, let me know in the comment section below. And if this video gets to, let's say, 1,000 likes, then I will definitely do that video, and I might even make a video about Godzilla versus the Ten Tails if it's interesting. I think I would have to take feats from Godzilla X Kong and do it that way, because for those of you who don't know, he does get stronger in that, as you may have guessed. So if you guys do want that, get this video to 1,000 likes, and I'll get it done. So the King of Monsters defeats all of the bijuu except Kurama, only being able to outmatch him when he's powered up. But what did you guys think? Did you love it? Did you hate it? You think I was right? You think I was wrong? Make sure to let me know in the comments section below. But as a preview for next week, I will be continuing the Crossverse videos by diving into another world, the Pokemon world. That's right, next week we have Ash Ketchum versus the Chunin exams. Now, I am so stoked for that video, and I hope that you guys are as well. But again, that's it for this video. So, if you enjoyed it, make sure to like, subscribe, notification bell, all that good stuff. And you made it this far, I mean, you know, why not leave a like, right? But I do want to say thank you so much for watching all the way to the end. I hope that you have an awesome rest of your day. And until next time, Sage